Man, scriptures on air.
Hello and welcome everyone to the FS On Air podcast. My name is Jorg Longkit, and with me I have my co-host as always, Proteus.
What's up, everybody? Back at it again.
And today we are playing Arkham Origins.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no, it
Shame
is
about
actually
Troy
a
Baker being on
podcast.
the voice cast, though.
Oh, good point. I guess we'll do the podcast then. With us we have a guest, a Mr. Nigerian Prince.
That's right, it's me. How's it going?
It's it, yeah.
How you doing? Glad to have you here.
Fine, I was really excited to play Jokers in Arkham Origins, but then I guess doing the podcast, you ambushed me.
Yep. No Arkham Origins.
Never say never.
Chucky's happy about that. He's like cheering in the background. He's like Blu-ray Angel doing the reaction to the Batman trailer. Yeah!
As per tradition, we have the recap of events because, well, we try to keep to our good schedule, but sometimes time just gets away from us. So, a couple things have happened since our last recording, so let's get into it.
Yes, how embarrassing.
How embarrassing.
But yes, the recap. Start off, Tangled Webs, which we will be talking about, has had a nice amount of sessions, if I must say so myself.
I think we've been, doing pretty good considering how hard it is to get everybody together these days. So we got a pretty good ensemble cast, so that's understandable. But the sessions that we have had have gone pretty smoothly, as smoothly as they can go these days. And everybody's bringing their A game as usual, which is good because I think Nigerian and Spider brought a really good script to the table here, which we'll obviously get into more a little bit later. And of course, Man of Tomorrow has been wrapped for several weeks now. I was hoping to get that done more towards the end of last year, but I'm at least glad that we got it done in a relatively lean time frame considering how long some projects can go. So I think we did that pretty well, and I was pretty happy with how that turned out in the end. Hopefully y'all enjoyed that too. And of course, the one and only Legion Lost finally was fully cast, premiered, and its first episode, as of recording time, has wrapped, and the second episode should be, well, who knows at this point. I need to stop making predictions that horribly date themselves. So
It will end tomorrow. Tangled Webs, everything will be end tomorrow. Or
Real?
maybe 2024 when this episode comes out. That's not an insult. I'm sorry.
I don't know how Paul gifted you the gift of prophecy, but that's completely true. Yeah, it's gonna be done.
Dang. Who knew? And then, of course, Starforger Season 2 finally wrapped last month, and I think that was a pretty solid conclusion to an all-around banger season of one of
she's starring on my Forge if you
finest
get the
television
drift.
shows. The GOAT.
Yeah, no, the Meteortide content's been doing pretty good, I must say.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little biased, but I've been pretty happy where we're going with it.
No, you're not biased. Things have been very, very good on that front, and I feel like things are a lot more what's the word? I don't know, just a lot more successful and I guess everything in terms of how we've been putting it out has been flowing better.
Yeah, I think we've been pretty good in getting it out. Hopefully Cerberus will be able to come back not too long from now later, because I mean, not uncommon for some hiatuses or whatever that's been happening for Fast Times in LA, but I'm sure that'll come back soon enough as well. So we'll see what happens, and Plasma Man Season 2 should be joining with its conclusion in a couple weeks from day of recording. Heck, it might already be done by the time we get the next one out. Who even knows? It's crazy how things go. But with all of that wrapped up, now we will get into the main feature of today's podcast episode with our guest of honor, Mr. Nigerian Prince, on Spider-Man Tangled Webs.
I'm Spider-Man.
I'm Spider-Man.
That's what he says. All right, yeah, no, let's start this discussion then. So, I think I think one of the biggest things we got to talk about is, this progression going back from, Back in Black, which kind of started this MFSU Spider-Man series.
Oh yeah. Back in Black was a really cool thing because I was directly involved with the kind of the direction of it, but I wasn't exactly in a director position. The original script was supposed to be something more of an, I don't know if I want to say art house, but the guy had pretty big aspirations for it. But I feel like we moved it around a little bit. It was originally going to be a trilogy, and we decided to maybe shift things in a different direction and just start on one film. So that's how Back in Black came around. And I thought it was a lot of fun because even though we had a replacement director, I believe second idea was what came first. Came first in production. So we decided kind of put Spider-Man kind of the middle of things. He's already married, he's already established. And from there, we didn't expect that we were going to start this whole MSFU thing, but MFSU thing. But it was really cool to get there and get things moving along. There was I don't want to ramble, but there were some difficulties with I think some production. We had a rotating director at some point. A few scenes had to be cut actually, since we thought that the script was getting a little too bloated with some conclusion parts. But I think that aside from a few interesting parts of the script, we got a lot of things worked out, and I think that we're pretty happy with how things have been progressing so far.
Well, yeah, no, that's great. And I know that making a sequel to a project which, if I'm not incorrect, had a bit of delays and roadblocks in terms of direction. That's a whole other story for a different day. But
yeah.
so far I think you've made the transition pretty smooth, though. Doesn't feel like it's played with any confusion on which way it wants to go, and that's always good. Yeah, I'm seeing from what I've seen, there's very clear direction and a vision here. So yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that it's kept the tone and story ambitions pretty consistent was definitely fully, at least in terms of its original outline and everything, and it definitely consistency is something that I sometimes struggle with, so I admire writers who are able to master that, and I think that you and Spider are really good with that. And it just feels like the vision is clear.
Yeah, thank you. And I did want to say that I feel like I wouldn't have been able to just fight a couple of Korg, Spider, and Chucky. It's been a lot of really good. We had a really good dynamic in the writing room. We threw a lot of ideas around and we picked some up and put some down. And I'm particularly one that I found interesting was that how we developed Harry Osborn being the first Green Goblin, and then now since we have a character named the Green Guardian, who we all know is Norman Osborn at this point, it's been an interesting kind of reversal of things. Where it's this kind of a similar goblin, but there are all those little parts that make differentiate Harry and Norman that I think is very interesting in that dynamic. Part of that is because one of my biggest inspirations from this was actually, I think most of this is very inspired by J.M. DeMatteis's run on Spectacular. I think most of this, actually, big part of the dynamic I want to pull from was The Child Within, which is a story about Harry, but I felt in these circumstances with how we set up Harry being the first goblin, could very much also apply to Norman, who's in this very hurt state, and instead of a almost brotherly relationship, we go to a father and son relationship.
I think that you've done those parts pretty well. I think that's I'll definitely. Admittedly, I'm still in the phase where there's a lot of comics, classic or otherwise, I still need to get into, so I'll definitely try to take a look at those at some point. I always liked the reversal of the roles of who is Goblin first, because typically what you've got, cinematic or otherwise, is that you've either got your Norman Goblin or your Harry Goblin, and the other one is either entirely out of the picture or they're just in the background, so I like the idea of having Harry become Goblin first, and then later, after the tragic story that happens with his final fight with Peter having Norman become the goblin out of grief. I always thought that was a really well done element of Back in Black, and I think that you've developed his full transformation into that role in Tangled Web's Reload, the casting of which really helps that, of course.
Yeah, thank you. I think that a big part of it is the idea of kind of legacy, and Norman twisting the goblin in a positive direction, or trying to do so. But yeah, it's very clearly the sequel is going to have Bart Hamilton be a bigger villain than Norman or Harry ever were, and he's going to be the true goblin because he has so many comic appearances and such.
Real goblin.
Yeah, the real goblin. He's good to our Joker.
Real goblin, yeah.
Yeah, there are a bunch of different Green Goblins in the comics that I think some kind of hit or miss, but I think it's no replacement for Norman and Harry. And I think that Harry is the one who I think... Norman Osborn's probably one of my second favorite comic character, surprisingly. But I think that Harry's Goblin is... It's such a degree where it's very hard to compare the two, which I like more.
Yeah, I definitely get you there, because, like, I think both have good dynamics for Peter, because, you know, one is, like, the father he never had at first who eventually turns to darkness, and the other is, well, quite literally his closest and sometimes, depending on what you're reading and or watching, only friend who he loses to that tragic battle. And they're probably the best examples, which is why we always see them. You know, the goats are the goats.
Yeah,
they are in fact the goats. You can't lie there. They're pretty goat-like.
Yeah, they are.
Also,
Osborn.
real quick, shoutouts to Nigerian. Also has a project with Ox. Let's go.
Very true. Yeah, Ox. I really want to put the Enforcers in, and I think that
I love the Enforcers, dude. I love them.
Oh, yeah.
The 60 series actually is the Enforcers.
Yeah, and I think that the actors have been killing it for that. I think that part of I took a bit of inspiration for Spider-Man parts. Specifically, I remember New Ways to Die, which was a Dan Slott story. Had Bullseye have a team on Thunderbolts where they use homing projectiles. And part of Fancy Dan's arsenal is that he has projectiles that home in on Peter, really mess him up when he's not expecting it. So I think it's been really cool to take a few kind of leaps and bounds from that to apply it elsewhere. And another inspiration I wanted to really quickly pull up, because I feel like it would be a shame if I did not talk about this, was the JMS run of Spider-Man, or Amazing Spider-Man. I was also a pretty big inspiration, especially in that opening scene where Peter goes back to his apartment and cleans up, and his internal dialogue. That's always been probably my favorite Spider-Man. Actually, that would be my favorite Spider-Man run of all time, even though it has since passed in One More Day, which those two are actually probably not the worst things that ever happened to Spider-Man, I'd say.
And I mean, their blow has been lessened now that they've either been recontextualized or removed from canon entirely, so it's not as bad as it could be anymore.
Yeah, Since Past has definitely been mitigated, but I feel like reading it, I thought it was still a pretty good display of characterization from most of its characters, which is a take that I feel like a lot of people watch them, probably some I feel like a lot of people would kind of read the content of it, kind of like Spider-Man Reign, where a lot of people read the one line from it that sticks out and they say oh, that's a terrible story. But reading over, actually, I like it quite a bit. I think it's a interesting story, and I know it's not very common, but I think it's still worth reading as a good Mary Jane Gwen Peter story. And another thing that I really want to emphasize is the JMS run kind of shows Peter as it gives life to New York City, and it gives life to him. He's kind of trying to pick his life up, because in that run, him and MJ are temporarily separated. So he's kind of trying to make it work out in his small little apartment and he's trying to go towards something. And there's a sort of a parallel between MJ over in Hollywood and Peter in New York in the comics, and MJ in the hospital and Peter trying to make things work out solo with that guilt and that after the events of Back in Black. And I've been really having fun with writing that kind of thing.
And I think those are all really solid inspirations, perfect places in Peter's life considering the story and where it's going for him.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, the last session, Peter in a very interesting place of, I think, floating in the East River, while Green Guardian and his enforcers are cleaning up New York City. So, even though there have been some some delays since like life gets in the way, and that's always been probably the biggest difficulty of writing. We're in a place where it's kind of pretty tense, and we're actually rounding up on the end of the second act pretty soon, I think. Based on it's really cool.
And Nigerian, I just wanted to say, been great talk, been a great thing having you here. Great to chat with you as always. But if there's anything you wanted to say about Tangled Webs before we wrap this whole thing up, I guess as they say, this would be the time to speak now or forever hold your peace. And I hope we've talked about everything that you really wanted to get into with the project. We've gotten some great insight on your inspirations and what you were going for. It's been really nice.
Yeah, thank you. First, I guess I'd like to say that I want to extend my thanks to everyone who's helping with writing and helped me with editing and even just showing up for sessions or being part of the chat. Anything that really happens is a part of, it really helps me remember why I really like writing, and it helps me. You guys give so many like great ideas and push things forward and back, or even tell me like what can be improved, and I'm always appreciative of that. So first and foremost, I want to thank anyone who's been writing with me or helping me out with any project. And I just want to say we got a lot of really cool things coming from Tangled Webs. I know that's as generic as it gets, but we're in for something personal. We're in for something really cool. And the more I can write something that I really feel that I and others with me have been pushing forward and pushing to completion, really, I'll be really satisfied with that.
I really do get what you mean, especially with what you said about the stuff with Beetle and Screwball, all that stuff. I'm really glad we're getting more of that because, I tease it a lot when I talk with Chucky and VC. But if you ask somebody today, hey, what villains do you want to see in a Spider-Man movie? You're gonna hear a lot of Kravians. and
the Kravians
nothing
must have
else.
been real mad when No Way Home was made and they didn't have to use that script. There is one more thing we should probably talk about, because like Drunk alluded to earlier, we did have another movie involving the Enforcers.
Alright, yeah.
That finally has seen the light of day, and it seems like people are enjoying it so far.
This is mine. I'll say what it is. It is Spider-Man: Homecoming, the Jorn cut. And you're probably thinking, Jorn, you didn't fucking work on that movie. You can't do that. Well, it's just me reimagining Homecoming, and I've worked on this for a while. To give you guys an idea of how long ago I worked on this, only FS people get this. I was still using Raimi memes. I was still on that Reddit, so that's gonna give you an idea of how far back I was thinking about this or working a bit on it.
Yeah, I did want to ask, I know it might be hard, so it's okay if you can't quite remember everything, but where would you say most of your... I know I worked on you with it for the last third, but you did start it before I came on, so what were your overall inspirations? Because
my overall inspirations? I actually, this is kind of a weird story. It was a lot of VCing with some other people, and we talk a lot about Spider-Man. I think Proteus joined a few of those VCs once, but we talked about a lot of Spider-Man, a lot about Homecoming, and I can't remember exactly what it was somebody said, but something fucking clicked in my head. That was like, wait a minute, I'm on fan scripture, and this is a thing that is very possible for me to do. And I thought, oh yeah, no, I have ideas for how I'd like to do Homecoming. I'd have a few. Another few inspirations, I guess. One thing I definitely knew I wanted to do was there's the thing about Homecoming, right? Is that I don't hate the movie. I definitely don't. I don't want people to think I hate the movie. But after watching it, I definitely felt as if it had potential being held back, because I like Tom Holland's Spider-Man. I like Michael Keaton's Vulture. You gotta love Michael Keaton's Vulture. And I kind of felt like the movie was a little held back. The action in the movie never flowed how I wanted to, which is weird because this is an MCU movie. The story progression overall didn't feel quite right with me. And again, I definitely don't hate it. It's just I feel like there could have been a lot more here. And that's basically what I aim to do. I aim to rectify what I thought slowed down and held back the film.
That's no excuse. I'm proud of you. And I've lost sight of that somewhere, but I'm going to make it up to you, Harry. I'm going to rectify certain inequity.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there, and I guess it's good that we agree on that, because like him, I don't hate Homecoming, although it's not particularly my favorite, and I haven't watched it in quite a while. I watched it a bunch when it first came out, and I went from genuinely really liking it to the more I thought about it, just kind of going, huh. I don't know about some of this stuff, because I genuinely like it. I think Tom Holland's a great version of the character. I really like the suit, even though I don't really like the logo, so I'm glad that they've got a better logo on the new suit that he gets at the end of the new movie. Spoilers, but
yeah, I'm not I'm not sure if a bunch of people noticed this. I did this with the what's it called, the fan cast pictures, but the suit you'll see that Tom Holland has, it isn't actually the official one. It's one that they had in Civil War and made it as far as filming, but they didn't actually use it. You can see the spider's a little different. I guess you could call it a little more comic accurate, if you want to.
But I genuinely think that the webbing and the literally right out of the Ditko era logo was perfect.
It did. I noticed too. Did make into merchandise, and I think that was a very good pick for this. But it is also very cool to see this project after. I've seen it talk about it floating around for a few years. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Because normally when you see that, it's because it's not done. But legitimately, we have had this done since I remember it being October 2019, but we have just had trouble with scheduling because by late 2019 we had a lot of legitimately for the past year or so we've mostly been working out stuff that was planned in either late 2019 or early 2020 because our slate grew so much in that frame of time. So
yeah,
it's been a lot.
There's been a lot of spread across different places, but it's really finally cool to see this project come out and be itself.
Yeah, no, I'm very glad I'm able to get it out. I've been waiting for this for a while, and I'm glad I finally get to. I remember, again, to give you an idea of how far this went back. This was back when I was like, if I pitch this, people might not fucking audition for it, because this was back when people were very pro Raimi and very anti everything else, and you can tell we've all changed very much. People are very vocal about how they feel about the other films. I guess you could call them a lot kinder too. And that's not to say everyone's hated it on there, but people definitely softened up, I think.
It's not because I'm one of those people that's No Way Home fixed this character. Legitimately, I think although Far From Home still has a lot of problems, in terms of the characterization of Peter Parker, it's significantly better, and I think No Way Home, even excluding the inclusions of the other two Peters, further improves the characterization of that character and just makes him feel more like, what I wanted to actually see from that character.
Yeah.
It is a case where normally I would have probably complained that if some people would say, for example, that Far From Home was just still part of his origin story, but I think that No Way Home made me really like their final execution of it.
Yeah, I think No Way Home was definitely trying to frame it as this has really just been the longest origin story ever, which granted, I do find it a bit weird because both of the other two films have their moments where it feels like you're supposed to say, okay, now he's Spider-Man, but it's they never could quite decide where they wanted to actually make that hold, because I remember the promo from Far From Home being okay, yeah, now he's not going to need any outside help, he's going to be his own person. And I was thinking, they're not going to hold themselves to that, are they? And they really didn't, which granted I understand why. In order to make the script work the way it had to, they really had to bring in a lot of outside influence just to make all of the inclusions of the other two Spider-Men work and things like that, and all these villains. But it is kind of weird that I guarantee you, even if they used the other script that I'm sure the Kravians were really salivating about in all the early reports,
I'm very glad we didn't get that. Just want to point this out.
I doubt they would have held themselves to it there either, but it's nice that they finally just cut it off and said, okay, yeah, now he's the real deal.
Could you imagine if we had all those villains in different Spider-Man in a 5-minute post-credit cameo, and they just get sent back to their own world? That's the entire thing. I think you can imagine what I'm referring to here when I say that.
Yeah, I think I do.
You get 5 seconds Willem Dafoe, and that's it.
Like, that's it. That's it. And then
Imagine
Kraven
literally
walks
the
in.
only line you got from him was the line of him referencing the "something of a scientist myself" line, and then he just
Dude, that would drive people crazy.
And then he just goes back on sabbatical.
goes back on stage. But yeah, that's all really great, and I'm glad that I think it's been going pretty well. The last 2 sessions were really got people excited, and like that just makes me happy to see, because like I'm definitely not trying to be ungrateful here, because like literally anyone who watches a project these days I'm grateful for. But in terms of the average Twitter user, it was doing numbers the other night, so it really felt like a 2019 FS session again, minus the
Oh
attitude
yeah,
that we
it
had
felt
back then of
just
just
like
being
that. Dude.
absolutely rude to everyone, even our best friends, for no reason at all. But other than that, it felt like a 2019 session.
The infighting made the sessions. It added another layer to the fight scenes we had to do.
Wouldn't that be something?
We
Yeah.
all gotta look to the infighting like Norm looks to the mask.
I'm just picturing that message of Chucky from like the one of him when he had the Kingpin PFP where he's like, if everyone just does what we say, and just shuts the fuck up, and we can go to sleep.
Yeah, Spider-Man 6.
Spider-Man
That was the
6.
first session too, dude.
Great moment.
That was such a fun
But yeah.
trilogy to write with you guys. I think I was there more for 4 and 6, but all the great memories of the cast sessions and a lot of the chaos of early fan scripture was a lot of fun.
Unfortunately, I was only really there for when 5 was airing and parts of 6, although I wasn't able to do everything I originally would have because we kind of had to get that moving along towards the end of it. But yeah, though that early era, as much as I would not like to go back to it because I like to think I've changed a lot as a person since then, I like going back to the writing that we did during that era because it's very different from what we do now. Because I think it's a good thing to like take a look at how we've evolved since writers and what things we were doing right even back then that we might do even better now. Things like that.
Yeah. Without like taking over too much of this like section to say
Oh,
a
no,
thing
you're
like
fine, man.
the old writing style. I think it was very fun because we'd have these times where we'd just kind of riff off and then we'd go back to the scene. And we'd specifically, I remember for Spectacular Foes, where we all had like these big group ensembles, and we'd riff off, and then the director would have to like kind of herd us back in a direction. But I think that those little interactions is part of why I felt really attached to the Foes, and why it was a little hard to read when some of them did have to die for Spider-Man 6. But I mean, then with I don't mean it in a bad way because we also got Foes Go to Hell, which that is something I wrote, but I'm not trying to toot my own horn here. I'm just saying it was like we got really attached to these characters, and it was really cool for the old writing style how kind of built up our bonds as writers.
No, that makes complete sense, and no, I really do get that. I like that a lot about back when we did Foes, getting to kind of have a lot of freedom in our stories and all that.
And before we move on to our actual last thing, I do want to give a shout out to the cast of the project because I think we've assembled a really good cast for this.
Oh yes, we've got a really good cast.
And we had a lot of auditions too. It took a while for us to sort them all out, but yeah, it really feels good to just get a big ensemble cast again because I know that feels like the regular thing to do. We did that for Tangled Webs, which was really good, but it's always fun to do that, especially considering that like I typically write smaller projects, so I haven't really done that since Rogue War, which wasn't that long ago, but it certainly feels like it was a while ago now. So yeah, feels good.
Oh yeah, definitely. Everyone's done a great job so far. A lot of great improv from Jedhu and Roos. There as Peter and Harry. That's another thing. Kind of want to talk about actually, since this relates to that. The writing process of this very interesting because with FS we've got a lot of original scripts, but this is like this is a case of having to go back at an actual movie and rewrite parts, rethink sections, take out and put in new characters. It's quite different. And there's a lot of debate for me on like what scenes to change and whatnot. Because I remember it was and later on we're gonna see more of this, but in terms of having to make whole new scenes, it's a very fun, but also a very I guess it's a very daunting challenge, right? Because you wanna kind of you want to try and I wanted to try and improve where I saw Homecoming fell short, but at the same time I didn't want to feel like I was writing a downgrade or anything.
Yeah, no, I don't think you were writing a downgrade in any way, and I mean, like, you know, obviously every scene with, like, Harry and Norman was going to be an original scene because those two just were in the movie, but I think the original scene you and I added that we, I never felt like we were taking away or recontextualizing anything else by accident, so I think we made it all go together pretty well. And like, I should say that while we did technically finish in October 2020, right before the rolls went up, Jork actually did make a lot of additions himself with suggestion from Chuck E. Cheese's. So, you know, shout out to Chucky, of course. He's always been super helpful just to make sure everything's as polished as it can be. The GOAT.
Yeah, I actually want to talk a bit about some of the rules I set up for myself with the script, because I'm not sure I've actually told anyone the rules I set up with myself before I made this, and this was even back when I started. So here were the rules. First rule was...
The first rule of
Homecoming.
is...
I could not change anything that happened in Civil War. Anything that happened in Civil War could not be changed. Because I wanted, the reason I set up the rules is because I didn't want to be like, I'm gonna change it so Civil War establishes he was a veteran, he fought on the moon or something. I wouldn't add that, but point is I kind of wanted to be realistic about that, so I was like, okay, can't change anything that happened in Civil War. Second rule, Homecoming.
Is...
Peter's suit doesn't have all of the upgrades or anything from that like Tony adds in. That's why he's making his own upgrades. So basically, the rule I said is that since Civil War doesn't contradict it, Tony just gave him like a much better looking suit with better materials, but he didn't actually add in anything, you know, special aside from just making a nice looking suit.
I did mean to mention that earlier, but like, yeah, one of the main things we both agreed on pretty early on, even though he'd pretty much already finished Act 1 when he asked for my help in writing the rest of it, was that, like, yeah, Kara needs to go. Like, don't get, again, I like parts of Homecoming, but I will never understand the inclusion of Karen. It just takes away.
It was weird.
From the
like
character.
that.
Like, it makes sense for a character like Iron Man because, like, that's a character who always builds stuff. He's always building stuff to help him do things easier and more efficiently. Granted, Spider-Man does that too, but like he always had a more scrappy, I don't know, like college student budget level tech kind of feel, not that high reaching at all, and it just felt like a weird inclusion of the movie to me, and I'm very glad that Far From Home pretty much ditched that. I don't have nearly as many problems with Edith as I do with that because I'm choosing to pretend that bus scene doesn't exist. It's like, Far From Home be so good, and then the bus scene comes on. But if you ignore that, the rest of it is genuinely pretty good.
Movie and then the bus scene comes on.
My day be so fine, then boom, bus scene.
Yeah.
This movie is
I'm like, this is fine. This is fine, bus scene. Yeah, I don't know. But yes, no, I did not want Karen in there, and I don't know. I just didn't think it made that much sense. And another thing, I'm not going to talk much further about it, but it is in the description, so I can touch on briefly. Is that I didn't want this to be about Spider-Man proving himself to anybody, because that's didn't feel that was important for this story. Didn't feel he needs to prove himself to the Avengers. I mean, he kind of just fought in Berlin and beat up 2 Avengers before fighting some others. So I'm pretty okay. I'm totally cool with how they introduced him with Civil War. So
yeah, that all made sense.
And that made sense. That actually did make sense to me. Interestingly enough, I learned the Russos prior to certain decisions. It's an alternate script of Civil War where Peter played a far more vital role and was even in the final battle. Curious about that, but whatever. Anyways, yeah, no. So the other rule was, no suit up. So yeah, it was. Sorry, The other rule was that no, Peter's not really trying to prove himself. Iron Man's still gonna come in. Of course, as we know, Iron Man's still gonna come in, but it's not gonna be as what's the word? Blatant as it was in Homecoming, where they have like a few scenes. Like he even calls him before he goes on the ferry in Homecoming.
I think that something that you do bring up with Privy himself, and especially to the Avengers, is interesting because if I remember specifically, I think it was annual number 3 for the original Amazing Spider-Man run under Ditko and Lee. Spider-Man does try to join the Avengers because he thinks he needs a paycheck to help support Aunt May. And he thinks that by being an Avenger, he'll get that. And they tell him that they want him to help contain Hulk. But when he goes to see the Hulk, he realizes that the Hulk is a bit more innocent of a creature than just rampaging and destroying, and decides that he isn't kind of put out for the Avengers business, and actually says that he doesn't trust a team like that doesn't look at the smaller picture instead of thinking about just the Hulk as a creature.
Yeah, no, I actually love that. I actually love that so much, though.
Yeah,
I love the idea of, like, you know, Spider-Man seeing the good in these people who the public sees as like awful, right? Like he's able to see the Hulk as an actual person and not a big green guy who levels cities.
Yeah, and he can very much relate to that too because of how the public sees him or ends up seeing him at some point. But another,
I guess I just don't quite understand why they never used it. I guess the way it must have went was that so many writers was like just storyboarded it and everything was like, yo, this would be a good idea, and the other writer was like, stop lying to me.
Stop lying to me!
I'm sorry, that was mean.
Hear me now?
Mark Ruffalo, stop lying to me.
But yeah, I think it's been really good just thinking about all these things in regards to how I wanted to handle what was going to be the same, what would be different. We sort of mixed a good blend, and
there is one thing I want to cover since Chucky brought it up, and I think it's a great point. My thoughts in this now that we have No Way Home, and I won't like be too long on this, but I will say that after watching No Way Home, it's pretty interesting considering I do, in fact, I can confirm I have ideas for like a Drawn Cut sequel, or I guess Far From Home Drawn Cut, and I'm just gonna say this: if I do get around to making a sequel to a Far From Home Drawn Cut, I don't want it to be thought as a No Way Home Drawn Cut, because that went in an entirely different direction that I liked, and I don't want to change that. I would just be going in a different direction. So that's all I'm going to say there.
I mean, what else are we going to do with it? Cater to the Kravians? No.
We are not going to appeal to the Kraven stands.
Just wait until the fan scripture cut of Sony's Kraven the Hunter movie comes out.
It will happen, 2022.
Speaking
Kraven's
of which,
real
your
name?
daily reminder, Morbius is coming in theaters.
Morbius!
2022. Morbius stands.
Morbius.
Where are you at?
More-
They're on the Mora bus to go see Morbius.
Here for more BS.
We will be watching Morbius.
Morbius in theaters, April 1st, 2022.
With Milo.
Speaking of- Speaking of future projects, I think me and Nigerian have a few of those, don't we?
That's
Yes,
right.
I
Yeah,
think
we do.
so.
Yeah. No.
No,
Just
go ahead.
I have a few things. I know there's Booster Gold. I know there's Super Mario. I know there's Pokemon Blue. Yes, I do in fact have scripts that are not Marvel, which is kind of weird when I say I'm working on Spider-Man. Anyways, here's my Super Mario project, and Nigerian, I believe, has Suicide Squad and Deadshot coming up.
That's right. I'm working with Noah, who has been a fantastic writer for this. We've been pushing around script ideas. He's been a pretty big force in writing this, but I've been contributing my own ideas since I've been reading Suicide Squad. I love what John Ostrander does, and Suicide Squad and Deadshot. Because Deadshot, I think, is one of the most interesting characters on the squad, and we are really excited to keep writing with what we're doing. And we got a really good cast of characters. If you've read the Ostrander run, you'll recognize a lot of them. But we pulled from some different sources, and I think it's going to be a really cool show in the fanscript for DC universe.
Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to it.
Yeah. Yeah, I do appreciate more focus on DC villains, because they do have quite a colorful cast of characters I like.
There is a sort of differentiation between DC and Marvel characters and sort of their aesthetics. And I think that it's always very interesting to look at how both companies handle them in their own respective ways. Definitely, yeah. And I don't know. I've been considering. I don't know. I've got having a lot of ideas towards what to do and what to possibly go forward with in the future.
I think it's really exciting, and I know, not that he's revealed much to me. He's obviously been very careful, but knows told me a couple things about working with you on Deadshot and Suicide Squad, and I can tell that he really enjoys working with you too. So I am very excited to see what you've got, and of course, Jark, I am excited when we eventually see Booster Gold, Super Mario, Pokemon Blue. I know all of those have been a long time coming, but I know that when you do get them done, they will be real cinema. Wherever, if in post, hopefully I can include that clip of Jeffrey Wright saying "it's cinema," because that would be very fitting.
Oh yeah, yeah, you can do that.
Very excited to see what you've got going. Fanscriptor Plus is a well of potential, and I'm very excited to see what
it has a ton of them. I'm just so happy that we're gonna get more of that.
Yeah, awesome. Also, shout out to Noah. I really appreciate working with you too. It's gonna be great.
Yeah, definitely. Shout out to Noah. And I think that's everything we needed to talk about today. But just want to say before we go, it has been really good to have you, Nigerian. Thank you for recording with us and talking about this stuff. I am looking forward to the next Angled Web session, and of course, Jark, I'm looking forward to the next Joint Cut session. I know both of those will be certified bangers. And yeah, I think we will see you guys next time. Thanks for tuning in, and hopefully this won't be too long in the pipeline before we see y'all again. So,
I'm very excited, yeah. Can't wait.